Hello everyone and welcome. Over the past couple of months, I've been working on a huge project in order to not only get as much of my information into one place as possible, but to also add some new information for people that are brand new to the game. I had a lot of information out before, but I had kind of lacked on that area of catering to brand new players, so some of the new stuff here should help out with that. And then there's additional info that will be very useful here, even for veteran players, that I haven't shared before. So, to start out with things, it's detailed on this starting page, but I'll go over it here in the video as well. The guide is structured in a way that each tab basically serves as its own guide, so you can click around and read for whatever you need to learn from the game. You do not have to read the guide start to finish, and I probably wouldn't recommend doing that because you would be here for quite a while. Now, if you're a new player and you don't know where to begin with or what to learn, I have structured things in a way where it's kind of the order I would recommend learning things in. So the game term glossary will be the first thing that I would want you to get familiar with, and then the space types would be the next thing you learn, and so on. Also, a couple things, if you don't have this tab open, there should just be a button over here for it. I don't know how that would look from mobile, but that's how it looks from PC. You need to have this open, that's the whole way that the guide works. And then also make sure whenever you click into one of the new tabs, you click it a second time. That'll open up a list that will allow you to jump around to different sections of the guide. That'll help you get through it a lot quicker. So, if you just want to go check out the guide now, you can go ahead and do that. If not, I'll kind of give a little bit of details about what each tab contains and some of my thoughts on them. I'm not going to go over the entire list of all the tabs, otherwise we'd be here for a long time. But anyways, the game term glossary is just basically the starting point for any new player, or if there's something in the game that you've heard of that you haven't maybe unlocked yet, or you just don't quite understand it, that's a good place to look for. So, for example, the game modes. A lot of people ask when you unlock the Mind Challenge or the Mind Trial, or how to unlock them, so this is a place you could go to check for that. And then aside from that, it just has pretty much a bunch of different details about what all the different terms of the game mean, because there's a lot of just terms that are unique to this game, like potentials and tactics, and legacies, that type of thing. Space types is a list of all the different spaces you can see in the game, like potential, element, HP, MP, and then it also has a list of black market, and covenant, and trial, everything you can get from there, as well as a little bit of information about how Alpha Sector works. The Tactic System Guide is just an in-depth guide about what the tactic slots mean and how you can't have duplicates of the same slot, how basically the skill tree for the tactics work, that type of thing. Then the Legacy Guide is just an in-depth guide for legacy characters, what all of this stuff means, and then it also has some depth about how to farm legacy characters efficiently to have exactly the two tactics you want to pass on to them. And now, here is probably my favorite part of the entire guide. One of the things I've always had an offense with in this game is how little information a lot of their tooltips give you, and I feel like the biggest offender of this is the legacy passives. One of the issues is that a lot of the legacy skills and passives will just either not tell you the duration of things, or they'll be inconsistent on whether they tell you the duration or not. But then the biggest offense, in my opinion, is that the in-game descriptions do not tell you how much damage you're getting out of your legacy passives. So, like, here, for example, in-game it just says you gain skill damage. It does not tell you how much damage you're actually getting. So that's two things I wanted to clear up with this list. All of these damage calculations or values are credited to La Lena from the Discord. They found out all of those for me, so a huge thank you to them. I probably wouldn't have been able to figure all that stuff out on my own, so I'm very grateful to them for going through and doing all of the work for all of these damage modifiers. Along with that, the other thing that a lot of things don't mention is stuff like when it says long range, I've went and added how far that actual long range is in terms of the game. So if you're standing at this range, you do get Noel's passive for extra damage at long range. And then just some other stuff like Lambda's passive, for example, just tells you gain MP when enemies fall, but there's a lot more complicated aspects to this, where they need to fall a certain speed before they hit the ground, otherwise it won't trigger the passive. So if you're just doing random knockups and making enemies fall that way, you're never triggering the passive, but once you understand how the passive works, you can make use of it a lot more easily. You just need to know that you need to knock enemies a certain height into the air, basically, as a short explanation. There's more to it that can make the passive easier or harder to use, but I won't go into full details on that. There was another one as well that was a huge thing for me to learn, and that was Ragna's passive. His passive buff can stack, but the game does not tell you that at all for some reason. You get less damage per stack of it, but you keep getting more damage the more times you can stack this in a row without letting the buff fall off, basically. So yeah, for the Legacy skill and passive list, it's not only a list of every single Legacy skill and Legacy passive, but there's tons of additional notes on either just my personal opinion of certain things, or just mechanically how the passives and stuff are actually functioning, or bonus information about them. One last example is, I think this is a pretty big one. The bats for Rachel's Legacy passive actually count as an attack. So if you have something like Attack Cold and Frost Burst on your attack tactics, or if you have something like Attack Chain Lightning, the bats can automatically apply them for you, which I think is something that's extremely useful to know. And then the recommendations tab is going to get more into territory of being very opinionated information. For all this stuff, there's never a true right or wrong answer. Like, there's never going to be a single list of potentials for one character that work better than all others. There are some cases where certain potentials kind of feel like they have higher damage output than others, but even those types of situations are based on a lot of situational aspects too. Like in Low Slace for Hibiki, for example, is something that is very powerful if you're running a Frost skill and a Frost Burst build on top of it. But if you're not running that type of build, then it's not nearly as powerful. So keep in mind when you're reading through this list that I had to generalize things quite a lot in order to make a generic list for characters. So I wouldn't recommend using this as a list as the end-all be-all of you should take these potentials every time you play the character, or that these potentials are the best. It's just a list of ones that I would recommend to a new person learning to play the character, or to someone that just wants to get a basic idea of how to play the character. So take these as like suggestions, and then I would also recommend trying out the other potentials as well, to see what you like for your playstyle, or what works best with the tactics you're running, things like that. There will always be way too many variables to this game to ever make a true tier list on best character, best potentials, best mind crystals, all that type of thing. So again, for the mind crystal list, it's basically the same thing. There's no correct option, there's no truly best option. Even if some options feel consistently strong and better than others, you're always going to be able to change around your mind crystals to fit your playstyle and fit what you value the most out of what you want out of your run. Like, if you are very good at not taking damage, then just go full out on offensive options and get as much damage as you want. If you're taking a lot of damage, if you're not as good as dodging, then you're going to value defensive options more. So again, these are just things that I recommend, and things that I feel like I have gotten the most value out of in my experience of playing the game compared to other mind crystals. Tactics are unfortunately the one place where I couldn't just keep everything on one build. It's so much easier to write out tactics the way I want to, like, display them on a Google Sheet. So I'm keeping these over here. There were also just... I tried transferring these over to the Google document, and it was just going to be a huge headache to do. So these are staying over here. I will also be adding on to these over time. I've gotten a couple new builds set up already with some of the new tactics, but a lot of them will be added over time. The Making Strong Characters guide is one that it's basically the same if you've seen this before. This is a guide I've had out for a long time. There's been a couple of updates to it for some of the Transcendence changes that happened recently, but otherwise it's the same build, or it's the same guide as before. And then for invincibility frames, I've went through and double-checked all of them. Mostly everything is the same here, except for... I did find out that Kokonoe actually does have iframes on her dash teleports, and I didn't have that before. And then I finally added in Icy. I most likely won't be updating this list for any new characters, because the developers are making... For one, they're giving characters way more invincibility frames than they used to. So you can see, like, Kaukaka has 4, Jin has 4. A lot of characters have somewhere between 1 to 4. And then you scroll down to Hazama, and he has, like, 12, somewhere around there, somewhere between 10 to 12. And same for Icy, she has a ton of them. And then also, they're just making them way more complicated to be able to keep track of and write down. So, like, for her Hazama, I can't just tell you that the move has iframes, I also need to tell you all the requirements of the hidden effects of everything, and it was just a complete nightmare to get the list for Hazama and Icy written down. So that's not something I want to continue doing in the future. And that brings up a good point as well as we end this out. I did mention it here, and I have it highlighted here. After this guide is getting published, there's no guarantee that I'm going to be updating it over time. It's just going to be based on how big the future patches are and what I feel like doing. Like I said, I put a couple months of work into this, so I kind of just want to be done with things for a while again, but that'll be something that we'll just play by ear as we go into the future. And then finally, the last page is just some of the resources. The Blazblue Entropy Effect Discord's always a great place to ask questions. I'm there pretty often, and if I'm not there, there's a lot of other helpful people as well. If you're watching from here, you already know about my YouTube, so I don't need to talk about that. But I guess if you are a new viewer watching this video, I have a ton of video guides, as well as runs with educational commentary, and then some other more flashy fights as well that aren't commentated. Aside from that, there's some save files on here. I might want to add a couple more later on, but for now, the two main ones are the Legacy Character file that has a bunch of the old tactics before the recent update, These will be good for inheriting into your new runs without having to set up a bunch of characters yourself. And then it has a mind trial file with a ton of characters that can very comfortably clear the mind trials. The characters on here are very powerful, sometimes to the point of even being too overpowered in my opinion. But that'll be up to you if you want to use them or not. A lot of these characters also contain full potentials, or pretty close to them. So if you're trying to just learn a character and test out their moves, this will also be another good file to use. And then, if you're watching this video as it comes out, this one's in progress, so it's not here yet, but I do plan on adding a new file of more pages of legacy tactics that are only the new tactics or things that work well with them. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. If you stayed to listen to my explanation of the entire guide, I hope the guide is able to help you guys out. If you see anything that looks like the information is wrong, or there's like typos somewhere, that type of thing, you can always let me know on comments of this video, and I'll try to get it cleared up or fixed, depending on what it is. But anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.